We have been through so much since March. Do you remember back in March when this whole pandemic thing began? We entered into this time of worrying about illness and death and what's going to happen with our schools and with our jobs. Some of us even lost our jobs. Then we got into even more tension with economic crisis and racial tensions being at an all-time high. Seemed like chaos was all around us as we continued on through the summer. And then as our children got ready to go back to school, the rates of COVID have increased, and we're looking at an American presidential election, and our country seems so divided. Over the last 6 months, so much has happened that has impacted us all, not to mention just the everyday life things that were going on. Some of you might have continued or maybe received a diagnosis. Some of you have faced death in your families. All kinds of life kept happening. Babies were born, people got married, funerals were had. Life continued. And it seems like things just kept piling on and on and on. And maybe you heard this. Maybe you heard, let's just trust that God is going to get us through this time. That God has got us. Maybe that was helpful for you, but if you're like me, when I was facing all of those things that kept getting piled on and on and on, I was facing all these things that I knew from the news and my own experience, and trusting in God just didn't seem relevant to the situation. Just didn't seem relevant because I wanted to be certain in the solutions. I wanted to be certain that me and my family were going to make it through this time. We were going to get organized and get things together because I wanted that certainty. And it's hard to be certain that God is going to show up no matter what. So how do we trust in God when we so want to be certain? Well, welcome everyone to the Daily Dose. My name is Maddie, and I'm one of the ministers here at Calvary. It's so good to be with you this evening. This week, we are walking through a series called The Sin of Certainty. And today, we are going to be talking about cultivating a habit of trust. If you're watching on Facebook, could you like and share this post with your friends to invite more into our Devo with us? And if you are watching on YouTube, could you hit that little bell, subscribe, so you can stay in touch with all that we've got going on at Calvary. And if you're watching on cable access, hello, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. In 2016, in January of 2016, my dad and I, we were headed down to the Mayo Clinic. My dad was struggling with some memory issues and some cognitive issues, and we were going to the Mayo Clinic to get answers about what was going on in his body. We spent the whole week down at the Mayo Clinic doing test after test after test to figure out what was going on. Well, you know, medical people, they've got their stuff together. After all these tests and all these analysis, they came back and they had a diagnosis for my dad. They diagnosed him with something called Lewy body dementia, and it's a type of dementia that the symptoms are kind of like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And it explained a lot of what was going on with my dad. And as we received this diagnosis, we suddenly were overcome with that we had come to the Mayo Clinic looking for certainty, and we had found it. We were certain in what was happening with my dad. And as we got that certainty, we were also struck by we had no idea what was coming next. Tears welled up in both of our eyes as we faced fear in what was to come. We composed ourselves a little bit and we headed out into the lobby, and we headed down the elevator, and there was a large extra lobby area in the downstairs. And there, as we exited the elevator, there was a singer. The singer was singing a song called How Great Thou Art. That song means a lot to my dad and I. And as we exited the elevator, we heard the singer singing How Great Thou Art. And our tears of fear suddenly turned to tears of relief as both of us were reminded of God's presence in that moment. In 1 Samuel, The ancient Israelites are facing something so wild. The Philistines are there, and they are trying to overcome the ancient Israelites' territory. And the ancient Israelites are just a small community trying to fend for themselves. And they end up defeating this foreign invader. And what happens is Samuel takes this stone and he calls it an Ebenezer. And it's a reminder that God was faithful throughout the whole ordeal. And an Ebenezer means stone of help. Stone of help. So cultivating a habit of trust, it's hard to do. It's hard to do. And it means letting go of what we know and expecting that God is going to show up. It means expecting these Ebenezer moments, looking for things like what happened with my dad and I, that anyone could have passed by and not realized God's presence in that moment, but we cling to it. Or Samuel has this physical reminder in this stone that God is always with him. Cultivating a habit of trust in God is like cultivating any habit. It's setting time and reminders to look for the ways that God is showing up in your life and in mine, and expecting that God is going to show up in wild ways and ordinary ways. And if we could focus on those Ebenezer moments instead of what we know, what we can be certain in, what we can prove, then we can also form a habit of seeing where God is going to show up and trusting that God is going to be there. And I don't know about you, but I am desperately in need of a God who is greater than my certainty.
Heaven thundered, and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you form. Faith commanded, and the mountains moved. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Oh, freedom conquered, all our chains undone. Sin defeated, Jesus is overcome. Mercy triumphed when the third day dawned. Darkness was denied when the stone was gone. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Oh, unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Oh, nothing shall be impossible. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on. unstoppable God. Let your glory go on and on.